The night was dark, the roads empty, except for the single pair of headlights slicing through the silence. The car, an old sedan, sped down the road, the speedometer needle climbing higher. Behind the wheel sat 14-year-old Lucas Carter, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. His heart pounded against his chest, but he kept his eyes on the road, forcing himself to breathe. Before we continue with this interesting story, please like and share and hit the subscribe button to support this channel. Also, turn on the notification bell for more heartwarming stories. Lucas had never driven before. He wasn't supposed to. But there was no choice. Lucas was the only child, at least for now. His parents, Mark and Julia, had always wanted a bigger family, but life had thrown them challenges that delayed their plans. With Julia now in labor, that dream was finally coming true. His mother, Julia Carter, was in the back seat, breathing heavily, pain lacing every inhale. Her water had broken nearly 20 minutes ago, and Lucas had panicked when he realized they wouldn't make it if they waited for an ambulance. His father was deployed overseas, and they lived miles away from their nearest relative. So, with no other option, he had grabbed the car keys, helped his mother into the vehicle, and floored it towards the nearest hospital. Mark had always planned to teach Lucas when he got older, but they never imagined a situation where he would need to drive so soon. Since he was still underage, they never prioritized formal driving lessons, assuming emergencies like this would never happen. They always believed an adult would be around to help if needed. Meanwhile, Lucas had been observant. Over the years, he had watched his father drive, paying close attention to how the car started, how the gears shifted, and how the steering wheel moved. He had even played around in the driver's seat when the car was parked in their driveway. That knowledge, along with sheer adrenaline and desperation to save his mother, pushed him to take the risk. His instincts, combined with what he had seen his father do countless times, allowed him to drive today, even if it was shaky and nerve-wracking at first. He barely noticed the flashing red and blue lights in the rearview mirror until the siren screamed at him. Panic surged through his veins. His mother groaned in pain, her nails digging into the seat. Lucas had no choice but to slow down and pull over, his hands trembling as he did. A moment later, two officers approached the car. Officer Daniels, a broad man with a stern face, tapped on the window while Officer Reynolds, a younger man, stood behind, watching cautiously. Lucas rolled down the window, his face pale. I know I'm not supposed to be driving," he stammered. "But my mom, she's having a baby." Daniel's eyes flickered to the back seat, where Julia let out a pained moan. Sweat glistened on her forehead. He immediately recognized the distress in her face. "Ma'am, how far apart are your contractions?" Daniels asked, suddenly all business. "Too close," Julia panted. "The baby's coming." Lucas looked at them desperately. "Please. I had to drive. She needs help." Reynolds glanced at Daniels, who nodded without hesitation. "We'll escort you. Follow us. But keep it steady, kid." Lucas exhaled shakily and nodded. The officers ran back to their cruiser, lights still flashing, and guided him down the highway. Lucas gripped the wheel tighter, forcing himself to focus despite the chaos swirling in his mind. Halfway to the hospital, Julia let out a sharp cry. Oh God, I think the baby's coming now." Lucas' stomach twisted in fear. "No, Mom, hold on. We're almost there." Behind him, Officer Reynolds radioed in the emergency while Daniels kept his eyes locked on the car. "We need paramedics at the ER entrance now. The woman is crowning." Lucas skidded to a stop in front of the emergency room just as doctors and nurses rushed out. They opened the back door, swiftly lifting Julia onto a stretcher. Lucas stumbled out, his breath ragged, his entire body shaking from the stress and fear. Officer Daniels placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did good, son." Lucas barely heard him, his eyes locked on his mother as she was wheeled inside. The officers followed, ensuring everything was under control. A nurse pulled Lucas aside, guiding him to a seat. "You're shaking. Do you want some water?" Lucas only shook his head, his hands clenching into fists to stop them from trembling. Minutes passed, then an hour. Every second felt like eternity. Finally, a doctor stepped into the waiting area, a warm smile on his face. "Lucas?" He shot up from his seat. "Is my mom okay? The baby?" The doctor nodded. "Your mother is fine, and your baby sister is healthy. She's asking for you." Relief crashed over Lucas so hard his knees nearly buckled. Officer Daniels and Officer Reynolds watched as he hurried down the hall, pushing open the hospital room door. Julia lay on the bed, exhausted but smiling, a small bundle wrapped in a pink blanket cradled in her arms. "Lucas," she whispered. "Come meet your sister." Lucas stepped closer, his heart swelling as he looked down at the tiny, wrinkled face. "She's so small," he breathed. Julia laughed softly. "And she wouldn't be here safely if it weren't for you." Tears stung Lucas' eyes. "I was so scared, Mom." She reached for his hand, squeezing it. "But you were brave." Behind him, the officers stood in the doorway, watching the emotional moment. Daniels turned to Reynolds. "We pulled him over thinking he was another reckless kid. Turns out, he was a hero." The next day, the story of Lucas' courageous act spread. The hospital staff, moved by his determination, shared it with the local news. People were in awe of the young boy who risked everything to save his mother and sister. The police department, instead of punishing him, honored him. The town came together, offering support, celebrating his bravery. His father, still overseas, heard the news and called him with a voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you, son." Lucas Carter had broken the rules, but he had also saved lives. And in the eyes of everyone who heard his story, that made all the difference. Should Lucas have been remanded or given a fine for breaking the law? Share your thoughts in the comment section. Also tell us where you are watching from. And if you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and hit the subscribe button. Do not forget to turn on the notification bell for more inspiring stories.